Goblin Cave contains strong language and potentially distressing content. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Goblin Cave. I am Jack. I am once again joined by my two wonderful co-hosts, Lauren and Seb. How are you both this evening?
Doing well from all the way down south. How are you guys?
Not bad, you know, carrying on through the schmovid times.
I believe the term is plodding along.
I think it's called a pepperoni.
I thought it was a Panasonic.
No, you're thinking of a panorama. It's actually a Panda Express.
Ah, that's it. You're right.
Yeah.
And we've started already.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
We're not even. We can't go off topic if we're not even on
We're
topic
not
yet.
on it.
If we don't start the topic, I don't think we could even like talk about off topic.
If a train is no longer on its tracks, can it technically be derailed?
I mean, maybe. It depends on the train. No, here's the thing: hover trains don't technically have rails; they hover. So, is a hover train ever derailed?
Or is it a case of how do you view time? Do you see it as one linear path or a cycle? At which point, then yes, once the cycle repeats back to the beginning, then the train will derail once again.
I'm so glad that we're having this conversation at the beginning of our podcast that it's not about trains nor derailing.
No.
Yes. Also, my Discord literally just cut out, so I didn't hear anything that was just said. So there's going to be a bit in my recording where I say, "Oh, the Discord," and I'll have no. This is all staying in. I'm editing this. If that's not obvious by now, that I edit these and I keep in the mistakes because they're funny to me and they entertain me.
True.
Seb is our absolutely incredible editor.
I wouldn't say incredible.
And a massive shout out as well to FinMK for the music, because it's just, I can't stop listening to it. I'm absolutely obsessed and I want to put it into a record. Why are you laughing?
It was just the way Seb went, FinMK!
But yes, thank you so much, Finn, for your incredible music. Yeah, so it's just incredible to listen to. I'm absolutely obsessed with it.
Mm-hmm.
God bless everyone in work because I just keep playing it.
There's not too much music that we've been given. Like maybe 3 minutes worth of music overall, with all of like the little the boops and the beeps. So yeah, God bless all of the people you work with. They must have a time. Hello, if you're listening, people from Lauren's work.
Yeah.
Hi there.
Hi guys. We won't say the brand's name for, I don't know, legal reasons, I guess.
Legal reasons.
But yes, hello to all of my amazing colleagues who have been tremendously supportive, and to all of our friends and listeners who are also incredible and super supportive.
They are indeed.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. We will. I promise we're going to get to the podcast.
We will talk about nerdy things eventually. In fact, how about we start doing it right now? Jack, do you want to tell us?
It's a good idea.
We'll start at the very beginning,
yeah.
which I've heard is a very good place to start.
Yeah. This week's topic, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is a little soiree into the idea of how, looking back at films, media, stories, from the time they were made, set in, and how time has changed the viewpoint of these films and various forms of media, and whether or not it's time or society that's changed them, how you think that they have changed, or how you perceive them now as someone of a different time period or of a different societal outlook. is today's topic.
Yes.
Yes.
Who would like to start? I have mine ready to go if anybody wishes to start the talk with. Very well.
That's such like a, well, if you don't want to start, I have mine ready.
I'll certainly.
I was the definition of, Miss, remember the homework I can present.
It was.
I'm sorry, if you were the kid who reminded the teacher that we had homework, I have no respect for you. I'm sure you're a great person. I'm sure, however you go about life, you're doing well. I hope you're not.
It reminds me of Monica and Friends, where she's like, I'm going to convince the teacher to give us a test. And it's like,
why?
Oh, that's a really good episode of Friends, actually.
It's very underrated.
Yeah.
Anyhow. So, to begin with, first I was going to talk very much about my viewpoint of when it was made compared to now the original film of The Wicker Man.
Brilliant film.
Yes, from the 1970s. I've realised that
I've not seen the original, so this is going to be very interesting. And I've only ever seen like snippets or reviews of the Nicolas Cage version. I need to watch the whole thing because
the bees.
You will have a tough time trying to find the bees.
Yeah.
Because it's been taken out of
really?
Like a lot of releases of it just have this like really weird voiceover of him, like, I don't know, being tortured, I guess.
Yeah. Insert random Nicolas Cage scream here.
But if you want to watch a good Nicolas Cage film, Mandy.
Yeah.
Brilliant film.
Which is actually going to be almost in the topic which I'm discussing, actually.
Yeah.
At first I was just going to discuss the idea of the Wicker Man, but then I was thinking, instead of just talking about that, I'm going to talk more about how the idea of religion and cults in horror films have changed ever so slightly going through the years.
Ooh, interesting.
Just how the viewpoint or the extremeness of these cults depends whether or not they are sympathetic or wholly antagonistic, basically. But yeah, going back to sort of the original film. Spoilers if you haven't seen it. But also, it was made in the 70s. What you doing?
It's like, I think free on YouTube.
Probably, if you look hard enough.
A lot of films like that are just scattered all over YouTube. I remember the days of just like, I watched Hoodwinked 2 purely through YouTube.
Terrible film.
The first Hoodwinked
was incredible.
I don't know how they made it worse. Like, the first one already looked like it should have been a bad movie, and then...
The first one, the graphics are shocking, but genuinely, the story and the songs and stuff were really good.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, yes, we're derailing.
Again... Welcome to the train tracks where every day there's an accident.
Oh boy!
Choo choo! The fat conductor says, "Not today."
Not today.
The fat controller laughed. You are wrong.
You are wrong.
But yeah, in the original Wicker Man, the general summary is that a girl is reported missing on Summer Isle, which is a fictional island in the Hebrides in Scotland. A police officer from the mainland heads across in an attempt to search for her and basically gets embroiled, slowly but surely, thinking he's going insane through the effects of this pagan sect. In other words, they worship a nature god, and the whole thing is that he has been lured across to be made as sacrifice to restore the crops on the island, etc., etc. But obviously, with it being the 70s, unlike now, I suppose it's sort of a period of maybe about 20 to 30 years change, that religion has taken such a back burner in many forms in society now. Like, sort of a lot of younger generations are less likely to find themselves being attached to a religion in some form, be it personal choice or not being as exposed to it through whether due to family upbringing or various things like that. But sort of watching it for the first time, as someone who isn't a religious person, I did find myself siding so much more with the pagan cult on the island.
Yeah.
And I assume it is because of it being the time now, but it was very much this policeman's come across, he thinks himself so superior and so sort of, he's self-righteous because he was the Christian heading across to these heretics almost.
Yeah, it's a moral superiority. It's like a girl offers herself to him, like, she offers sex kind of thing, and it's this really weird, kind of really cool moment it's a split scene, isn't it? Yeah, because he's on one side of the wall and she's on the other, and it's this like rising tension of, will he give in to what he wants? And he doesn't, and then is so morally superior in his own mind because, well, I didn't accept her advances.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool, but who are you benefiting?
And it is interesting because it's always that problematic aspect whenever there's sort of like a cult involved in a story, especially a cult that deals a lot in sort of like sexual rituals, which, you know, historically speaking, those kinds of like fertility rituals, especially in paganism, were very important and very culturally significant. And it's always, whenever it's depicted, even nowadays, but especially in a lot of recent media, cultists are always ascribed as being weird and other and different, and it does harken back to this Christian colonialism of religions.
Yeah, but the Wicker Man was very much the touching, sort of like the stepping stone for what I was thinking, because, like I say, watching it through, his sort of the characters played by Ed Woodward, obviously a very classic and very skilled actor in his own right. Also, The Wicker Man starring Christopher Lee, our person of interest from the first podcast.
Yes, indeed.
But the sort of self-righteousness and moral superiority, it really, at least for me, turned me against the person who's supposed to be the hero of this film. And just as the stepping point that I took from that with religion, you look back at sort of these older films, and a very prime example of this is The Exorcist, is that religion, it was very much a sort of a grounding point. It was always the sort of the strong force of good in films and sort of pushing them along. Whereas you come to sort of films nowadays, you go to the likes of, say, maybe The Conjuring, films along those sorts of lines. The idea of religion, it's almost feels like a just sort of like a saving grace almost. With like these supernatural horror films, like it's almost like it's their get out of jail free card as opposed to being a powerful force to protect.
I think though that can stem from things like real life exorcisms, because you know that's even in like real life, whether or not you believe in ghosts and stuff, exorcisms do still happen to this day. It's always the Catholic Church that is called upon, because it is always seen as always the Catholics, but it's always seen as, you know, kind of these demons from Christianity, and it's odd. It's an odd thing considering when you look at other religions and stuff. Surely it would make so much more sense. But then I suppose other religions kind of work with deities a lot more than Catholics do.
Sort of like a monotheistic, a monodeity, like a singular deity.
Well, this is the thing. We're coming at this especially from a Western Christianized perspective, a perspective which would be completely different for somebody who was born in Japan or India or China or anywhere else in the world, really. And I think another thing that does come up with sort of this is that we're coming from this from a British perspective, where the British response to religion is a lot more relaxed and a lot more, oh, you know, I call myself Christian, but I don't really practice. Whereas for Americans, it's a lot more of that personal attachment to religion.
I suppose that's
that's why these films. were so popular in the 70s and 80s because of that moral panic, the satanic panic, and like...
Yeah.
Oh, satanic panic.
Satanic panic.
And satanic panic still happens to this day. Like, genuinely, I was scrolling through Twitter before.
So wild.
And, someone was talking about their son had gone into school and was talking to his teacher about a D&D campaign that he was in. And the teacher was like freaking out about it and saying, you like calling, like wanting to have conversations with his mum and be like, you understand that this is workings with the devil, he's
going to cast
really
Cone
bad.
of Cold and kill his party.
I'm sure I heard somewhere that was literally in a court case about D&D sometime, about witchcraft.
Yeah.
And they were trying to say that D&D was witchcraft, and it says, no, it's just a game. It's like a dice tabletop game.
It's dice.
And the lawyer was going on.
It's graph paper.
Yeah.
Literally, it's pen and paper.
He was going on to this lawyer, the defendant, and he was saying, all right then, if my character was to cast Fireball, what's stopping it from affecting you? And the guy turned around and just said, it's my belief in God.
All right, I'll let you roll me a dex save with advantage then.
Yeah.
Could you imagine that's how all clerics got out of like trouble in D&D of like, oh, I don't think your spell hits because of my belief in God.
It's just like, fucking okay, right, that's fine.
Yeah.
Fucking cleric of Palor comes along just as like, I believe that the Lich cannot harm me. It's like, okay.
If only that would work.
Oh man.
Every party would just be a party of clerics just finessing their way through a campaign.
Battle clerics is a legitimate strategy if you want to do like a dungeon crawling game. Just battle clerics, and then you give your DM a lot of excuse to just throw, okay, I guess I'll give you a Balrog at level 4 because fuck it. You can just heal each other all the time. Yeah.
Hey, here's a Balrog at level 7. You could just keep casting Revivify if you want, as long as you've got the diamonds.
Spare the dying.
But yeah, going back to what you were saying about religion within horror films and stuff, I think, as you say, things like The Conjuring, things like The Exorcist was a real big one for the Catholic Church. Like, it was written by a Catholic. It was written by a pastor.
Oh.
Yeah. But it is very much, I was trying to say that, like, you go back to The Exorcist, how much of that is very much that religion is the driving force. It's the big, this is the right way to do things. The Conjuring, it's very much exploring what everything means as opposed to the religious implications. And then it's sort of the protection almost come the end is the religion. And with cults and everything, going back to sort of the Wicker Man and everything, it almost feels like that cults nowadays in films, they either have to be satanic, or they
pagan.
have to be so not pagan, for just to make sure that filmmakers make them come across as truly antagonistic. They have to be completely satanic, not pagan or anything like that, completely satanic, or their belief system and actions have to be so abhorrent that nobody in their right mind would believe that they were good people. So, for example, well, any generic film with a satanic cult, Hereditary, for example, with Payman.
Yeah.
You think of Mandy. It's not a religious group, but
it's a fanatical group.
They're fanatical, and the actions are so abhorrent that you have to hate them.
They pray to that demon.
Oh well, there's that
thing
as well. But you flip that on the side. You go to a film like Midsommar. Weird that I'm bringing up two Ari Aster films there.
Midsommar, I think, is genuinely one of the best cult films because you sit there and see the cult.
Yeah.
When you upon first watch, especially if you're a white girl, it's that thing of it feels safe.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that obviously I'm looking at it from a super privileged point of view. But it's that thing of they continually check in on how people are feeling. They continually make sure that you're feeling okay. They keep giving you drugs because, it'll help you relax and experience the Midsommar. Yeah. And, it's all of this. And when you look at it, when you watch it for that first time and you just look at it on the surface, it's, well, it's not great, but the people that they've killed
are worse.
Well, some of them are.
Yeah.
Some of them, the poor travellers, the British people, they didn't do anything wrong. They just panicked. Because it is stupid.
Do you see what I mean? The idea, though, that they have to be so abhorrent, because you watch Midsummer, and short of the two English travellers, there's almost nothing that the cult does that seems antagonistic. Because, spoilers again for Midsummer.
Which, if you have not seen it,
yeah, do go and watch it. It is
massive trigger. The thing with Ari Aster's films is that they will put you through your paces in your emotions. Yeah. So just really big trigger warning. If you're not feeling great, Midsummer is not the film to be watching, darling. Go and put like Inkheart on or something. It's
just watch BoJack Horseman instead.
No,
not after last week's podcast. No,
BoJack.
But yeah, the cult they sort of help the main character, played by the ever so talented.
I can see you struggling to think of her name, and I'm not going to help.
Oh my god!
They just keep complimenting their name, and eventually,
yeah, she's so talented.
Yep.
She's been in so many things. Fighting with My Family, also a very good film. The story of WWE wrestler Paige, also a good watch.
Florence Pugh.
That's the one. That's the one.
There it is.
Have I inadvertently made her the interesting person of the week?
Interesting person of the hour is Florence Pugh. And
might be Nicolas Cage as well. We're talking about Nicolas Cage a lot.
We are talking about Nicolas Cage a lot, and he is a versatile actor.
He's an Academy Award-winning actor, I'll have you know.
He is.
I've just said versatile. You said that like I said versatile was a bad thing.
I mean, from a certain point of view, you could say, oh, he's very multifaceted in the roles that he can play. It's the same thing as when you come off stage and your mum says, oh, well, you look like you were having a great time. It's just like...
Oh, you look like you were having fun. It's like, oh.
Okay, so the play was awful, is what you're telling me. You're saying that the Beast was certainly beastly in Beauty and the Beast. Okay, that's fine.
See, but I never had that. My mum and dad were just like, I didn't like the story so much, but you were good. I had the good version of that.
Yeah, that's also a fun one. You know something's going wrong when they say, you were great, but everything else, no. Oh, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
You can't even lie about it. Sure.
Yeah. But yet, the cult in Midsummer, they help Florence Pugh's character. They sort of go through helping her deal with the loss of her family,
He remembers her birthday.
The guy who's a part of the cult who's lured them over there remembers her birthday over her boyfriend, who is a terrible person. Because his friends are terrible people.
Yeah, well, especially one of them one played by Will Poulter.
Yeah,
Will Poulter.
The character
another
is a terrible
phenomenal
person. He is.
Actor.
Guy plays Chidi.
Yes.
You remember his name.
I do. I love him so much.
He is one of the more redeemable of that group.
Yeah, William Jackson Harper plays a character that, like, you know all of the people who are from the America in Midsummer. You know people like that, but William Jackson Harper plays that person who he's trying so hard to just get his degree, man.
Yeah. But it's just one of those, with all of that going on, the cult just seems to be the only person looking out for the main character, and then you're like, okay, yeah, just let them do their thing. Yeah. They're being caring and considerate. They, in our view, the way these characters have been written and portrayed, they're getting rid of a menace to society, in a sense.
Yeah.
And it's just very interesting how you go back 40 years and that type of cult is trying to be portrayed as this sort of evil thing, this evil cult just trying to sacrifice people for their made-up belief. Whereas fast forward to 2018, and all of a sudden it's, no, they if they believe this is what they believe. They shouldn't be mocked for this. They shouldn't be made to feel inferior. This is what they believe. Yes, what they do to make their sacrifices isn't great, but at least they're not sacrificing good people for the most part.
Yeah.
I think that also comes out of like a recent trend, especially in fiction, of portraying things no longer as being black and white. There's been a massive shift away from that in terms of story writing, which I'm not sure when that started, but like you can see it happening in Marvel films a lot. Like especially the villains in Marvel films started to become less and less just like, I'm evil because I want money and hate Tony Stark. And like, you know, you get some of the characters who just hate Tony Stark for I guess he's
Spider-Man Far From Home.
You know, Tony Stark sneered at him once in Geneva, and apparently now we have to do Iron Man 3. Who the fuck cares? Let's ruin one of the better villains in the Marvel canon just for Ben Kingsley to do a joke.
The lols.
Oh dear. Which, you know, that's a whole other thing. But like, it's also seen in sort of like Star Wars with Kylo Ren being like that morally grey, angsty character with anger issues, and you can see it a lot in a lot of things, like you mentioned with Midsummer, where there's a lot more of an indication of like things being a bit more grey, and it's. I guess it's just relative of the more modern, conscientious world that we live in, where we're more open to the interpretation of like different ideas, different thoughts, different motivations of why people do what they do. And it might also just be because the modern world is really fucking complicated. Back in the 70s, it was very easy to think that, you know, America was the good guy and, you know, rah, the rebels against the evil empire. Now it's... Who is the evil empire anymore? Aren't we all kind of the evil empire?
Yeah.
The bad place was the friends we made along the way.
Oh, man.
That's another, like, the bad place is literally about morally grey characters who are the good guys.
Yeah.
They're up against literal demons who are also good guys.
Everybody good guy.
It's very interesting, as you say, this kind of the moral superiority, I think, that has now shifted within media.
Yeah.
It's
just
so
more,
different.
It's just more noticeable when you bring it up in terms of horror films because they're so precedented on it in those certain aspects.
Horror has always had its finger on the pulse of cultural shifts. It always has. It was, you know, horror has always been political. Anyone who doesn't think that has never seen a horror film.
I think all art is political, though. Like you can't have something that has merit and value without it creating discourse and discord.
Yeah, and horror is just one of those things that it doesn't hide from it.
Yeah,
because it's already seen as morally reprehensible. It's never tried to hide it.
That's really fascinating.
It's a madness.
Because you get all of these people who, and for the longest time I did, who'll look at something like Saw or another kind of body gore horror flick. Torture porn film. And they'll just be like, oh, it's just torture porn. It's just a bunch of people and, you know, blackcurrant in washing up liquid.
Yeah.
And that's it. And it's like, well, but then it's actually kind of interesting if you think about it in terms of like horror films literally have nothing to lose. So why not explore the darkest parts of the human psyche?
I say that's at least what the first couple of Saw films do. It's sort of the human will and sort of the ambiguity of the act of murder almost, because throughout it, Jigsaw denies himself being a murderer.
Yeah.
Because he puts them in the traps, but it's never him that kills them. It's their inability to escape said trap. Yeah. In his eyes, anyway.
Is that how much pain are you willing to take to survive?
Yes, pretty much. Are you willing to do what's necessary to keep yourself alive?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's very much the kind of far, far, far pushed personification of society. Because, like, the whole thing is like, oh, you took a razor to your arm and tried to end your life. Now I'm going to put you in this trap. And it's like, cool, Jigsaw, just because he's on some antidepressants doesn't mean that he deserves to die.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, mental health is literally that stigmatized. It's like, oh, you think you shouldn't be here? And it's like, dude, you need to
Whoa,
whoa, dude. But Saw has always done that, and then there's literally one is about healthcare. It's because he wasn't given
it was
health insurance.
A scything indictment on the American healthcare system.
Oof, which we all love. The one Western country in the world that does not pay for its patients to have a fucking surgery done for them. Good job.
Yeah.
Land of the free, home of the brave, right? Or was that the other way around? I literally never know, actually, if it's home of the brave.
You got it right.
Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Yay. That's my one little reward from this.
So yeah, that's my contribution.
Nice.
I hope it sparked a couple of a nice little debate in our listeners' heads.
Yeah.
How viewpoints in that aspect have changed.
And definitely, we want that engagement, because comment, and subscribe, but also...
We didn't get that last episode.
We didn't, and now we have it. But also because these are interesting topics, and I think something that I would definitely like to come out of this is that it's nuanced, and there's never a right answer. There's never going to be one opinion. I'd really like to hear what people think about, do you like that cults are being represented the way they are, the way they aren't? Would you prefer them being in a different way? Give us your own thoughts and experiences. I think it'd be really interesting.
That's another thing. Everything that we're saying is genuinely our opinion. Unless, obviously, us saying Florence Pugh plays the main protagonist. It's
that
not
is
an
my
opinion.
opinion.
That is a fact.
You can't change my opinion.
But what, our thoughts and feelings upon different medias and how we're perceiving this is very much us and very much personal to us.
Yeah.
No offense nor harm is meant in any respect.
Yeah. And if we get things wrong, please do correct us. Please do talk to us. Tell us if we say something that's not on, because we want to learn. We want to engage with this. We want to be more conscientious.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
If it is possible, I would quite like to be the next one to sort of go off on one. My topic for discussion is the sort of the growing perception of whether or not video games, and violent video games in particular, cause violence, or they create sort of like a stigma of, if you play Call of Duty, you're more likely to go out and commit violent acts. And it's been something that's fascinated me as an argument and as a debate for years, and it's been really interesting actually to sort of sit down and look up a couple of these things, because the main assertion in this argument is violent video games cause violence in young children and teens, or they create this desensitization to violence. They create a society that doesn't think about violence as being particularly bad or rare, but in fact commonplace and happening all the time. And so a lot of the evidence from that is in these studies that have been done, observing the activities of children during or watching video games being played. And it comes from this, I did a little bit of research on this, and it comes from this idea of that general aggression model in psychology. I'm probably getting all of this wrong because I literally did a few Google searches just earlier today. Again, please correct me, cite me, give me examples if I'm getting this completely ballsed up. But the idea of the general aggression model denotes the idea that overexposure to aggression creates desensitization, resulting in a heightened aggression. So sort of it's part of this social learning theory where at a developing age, people will learn behaviors based around their environmental exposures. And it was a theory that came up more in the 60s and 70s, I believe, if I'm remembering my A-level psychology, as a response to behavioralism, which was the biological-based post-World War II theories of psychology, that everything was based around genetics, the human body and structure, and you couldn't really change a lot of how a person was. They were just born away. And it was this suggestion that learning would be the different way to to have these things happen. There was one study done where they showed kids a video of, you know, those like bonobo dolls where you punch them and they go down and then they go right back up again.
Yeah.
And they show them videos of people like laying into these bonobo dolls. I don't even know if that's the right name, but like fully on, like punching them, hitting them with like sticks and stuff. And then they bring in a bonobo doll and they let the kid do whatever they want with it. And more often than not, obviously, the kid would punch the doll and it would bounce back up. And the takeaway from that is if people see violence happening, then they're going to repeat it. Of course, the criticism with that is then, well...
It's a doll.
It's a doll, which it's purpose-built to be hit, to be punched. You see a punching bag in a gym, you punch it. Does that necessarily make you more aggressive, less aggressive?
Yeah.
And it's something that's fascinated me because, you know, cards on the table, I grew up with a lot of issues with sort of aggression when I was younger. So these kinds of studies have always fascinated me on a very personal level because I've been like, well, have I been socially taught to be this way, or is it something about me?
See, I'm the opposite end of that spectrum because I too have played a lot of sort of violent and sort of, you could argue, problematic video games at times, but for the most part, I don't have too much of a problem with aggression.
Yeah.
And I suppose with this argument, I know the media scrutinises this on the daily. It almost feels like it's the next scapegoat, sort of, for this idea of developing young aggressors and young offenders. But I know there was a couple of cases growing up I remember seeing, of course, quite recently. There was the case involving Slender Man.
Oh, yeah. With the copycat.
Yeah, you go further back, early to mid-2000s, there was a case of, remember the game Manhunt?
Vaguely, yes.
There was someone killed in a manner similar to the game.
Oh, no, go on.
It's like that Cry Wolf, isn't it? That sparked a whole... Because kids started playing... It's like TikTok. Sorry. Slight, like, shunk. Because so many kids are seeing stuff on TikTok, such as cutting your hair, piercing your own ears, piercing your own nose and stuff. Kids are getting, like, infections and stuff like that. If you inhale a media, your brain is going to want to replicate it. Yeah. We all have monkey brain.
Yeah. And this is the entire problem with... kind of with psychology in general, that we're trying to explain how our very, very complicated computer brains work, but we have very, very large monkey hand that not know what do. We're these highly intelligent creatures that have no idea what we're doing.
Yeah.
We are all dogs chasing cars, and I think if we ever actually knew how any of us worked, if we ever worked out how the brain works, I don't think we'd know what to do next. We'd just we'd reach a plateau, and we'd be like, okay. Should we put our brains inside computers now? I mean, fuck it. What else are we going to do?
That is the theory that will eventually happen. So
yeah, singularity. That's terrifying. It's exciting and terrifying.
But back to your point, Seb. I am very much on the only in rare cases does a violent video game have an effect that is so problematic to warrant a further in-depth look.
Yeah.
Yes, there will be those. The obvious thing is, back when we were young, 360 live chat in the middle of a Call of Duty server with the squealers.
Oh, yeah.
For context, squealers would be prepubescent children squealing down microphones saying they're going to kill you, etc., etc.
Ew.
Yeah,
exactly.
Xbox Live. I think growing up using like the original Xbox Live headsets and in those game lobbies, it was a wild west, and it just doesn't happen anymore. It's very much a time capsule. And I remember
it was.
Yeah,
I was just going to say it's the original battle royale.
It really is. And like I remember there was a piece not too long ago that was saying that like that was a really terrible time for people, and there was like something that we should never return to. And it's like it's lightning in a bottle. I don't think we will ever have that sort of thing anymore, because there's a lot more knowledge about multiplayer games. There's a lot more sort of like systems in place to stop that from happening. I go onto a multiplayer server now, 9 times out of 10 nobody has a single microphone. Was not the case 10 years ago. Everybody had their microphones. And it was when you were in a custom game for Halo and people were trying to be like, all right, I'm gonna go and do this, you guys go over here and do that. And it's like, nobody cares. Nobody cares for your tactics in this Halo multiplayer game. Just shut up.
It's like Halo was being just a generic shooter. Obviously not generic in the terms that Halo was so influential. I just mean it's a first-person shooter. And, it was. The only time you ever use your mic for tactics is when you've got a tactical game, like your Rainbow Sixes, that sort of thing. That's when you use your mic.
Yeah. And usually nowadays, a lot of the shift away from those lobbies has been into Discord servers. It's been into people in clans, and it's organized. There's almost been like from a very basic organizational structure into something a little bit more nowadays, which is interesting to sort of see that development. And to get back to sort of the violence aspect, like the counterpoints to the argument usually fall under the senses that most of these studies are very poorly have very poor methodology, or use very similar methodology, which is observation, which is never a very great form of research. That it tends to solely be around young children, not teens or older. There's not long-term effects being studied. It's very much like in the short term. Like you know this as well as I do. A game pisses you off, you are angry. You are mad.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you invest a lot more time and energy into these things because they are interactive, because you feel very much a part of them. Yeah. And it's more than say like we were talking about earlier with a violent, gory horror film. You're not going to have the same emotional reaction from that as you do with a horror game. There's just that extra layer of immersion into it, which people have said is a bad thing, and it's why violent video games are a danger.
But see, for a personal view on that specifically, I played quite a few horror games, quite a significant number of violent video games, and it's always a very different feeling. Say, for the very first time I saw the violence and horror in a Resident Evil game, compared to, say, the first time I ever watched even just a scene from one of the Saw films. The sort of, because it was so real, obviously because, it's filmed, it's not computer generated, I felt so different and so much. It affected me more seeing that, but not making me more violent. Or very much oh no, I know I'm playing these games, but this is because I know there are no consequences for me. There are no consequences to anything involved in this game. This is an outlet for any pent-up stress or anything like that. This allows me to play through, enjoy a story, and get rid of, just like expel the stress I store up. But even then, like, just personally, I felt the difference between something like that and compared to something that, because of the nature of the media, felt more real. And there's even those viral videos that go around that, the horrifying ones that are actual.
Yeah, the live leak.
Yeah.
The internet was a dangerous place 10 years ago. 10 years ago.
Sort of
15 years ago.
Yeah. But seeing one or two of them, even seeing that, I'm like, oh my God, that, it shouldn't be like that. We shouldn't do this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm so much on the only in rare cases should it ever be explored. And I think that's more with those who have underlying issues themselves. That's normally when they take more of these messages to heart and feel that more. And I mean that more in a later life. Obviously, like you say, a lot of these studies are for the younger children and not long term.
Yeah.
For the most part, you see a lot of these things. It's very much sort of like your teens to sort of your early 20s, where anything problematic happens. It's that sort of age group that are the ones committing, because they're the ones who are most likely to be affected. And it's at those ages where if you have underlying issues, that's likely where they start to sort of manifest
and
more than likely, and that sort of thing.
This is the other thing, because yes, video games are a risk factor, the same way that a violent movie would be a risk factor, but is that more of a risk factor than all of the others, such as poor homes, bad housing, abusive family relations, poverty in general?
Yeah.
How many risk factors are not considered because it's easier to just causation with video games? Lauren, what's your thought about this? Because I know that you don't play a lot of video games, but I think it'd be really interesting to sort of see, because me and Jack are obviously very biased in this. We love video games and have done our entire life. What's the opinion from somebody who doesn't play video games and the most violent that they get is in Stardew Valley when they die in the mines?
When you kill a mummy.
So I literally am doing the true pacifist route on Undertale currently, because I can't abide the idea of fictional characters being mad at me.
You're the kind of person who, when they say a mean thing in an RPG, reloads the save.
I did that once. I accidentally upset Linus on Stardew Valley and got really sad, and so I started that day again.
I'll put my hand up. I've done that whilst
I've done that so many times.
Playing through specifically Mass Effect 2.
Knights of the Old Republic for me.
There's that scene in Mass Effect 2, do you know, between I think it's Tali and it's either Tali and Legion or Miranda and Jack, where you need either full Paragon or full Renegade to make a decision that doesn't give you a poor ending for that character.
Yeah.
So it's almost feels like you have to do a full of one side. So I've reloaded it or played through again, making sure I did every Paragon route just to make sure I could have everyone survive.
That is also kind of bad design on that video game's part, in that, like, you have to force yourself into one situation just to save somebody. But yes, sorry, we derailed Lauren very massively here.
No, I think it's absolute bullshit. I think it's absolute rot to think that video games have such a sway. Because if that were the case, so many more people would be murdered. So many more banks would be robbed. So many more cars would be joyrided. Like, it would be the Purge, but every day.
Yeah.
If it were the case. I think you have to take into consideration the person's mental well-being, the person's upbringing, and the person's environment. Environment is such a massive part of what creates a person. The closest thing that I can get to is movies and books. And, like, I read some very violent books when I grew up. I watched violence on TV. We grow up watching, like, Tom and Jerry and the Looney Tunes and Scooby-Doo, which is kids being wailed on by adults. And then just being like, well, you're in a mask, ha 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 ha. And it's just such bullshit. I think it was Alfred Hitchcock. It was. Someone had murdered another person and cited Psycho as the reason why. I'm sure it was this. It was a horror film.
This
with
sounds
a horror
about,
director,
sounds about
very
right.
famous. I'm sure it's Alfred Hitchcock, because someone turned around, an interview turned around and was like, "So, someone said that they murdered someone because of your movie. How does that make you feel?" And he just turned around and he was like, "Well, I've made a lot of other movies. Why didn't that make him want to murder someone?" And it's like, you know what? Fair. Absolutely fair. Yeah, like, why would it just be, I don't know. Why would Fortnite make a child want to kill someone? I
was literally about to bring up Fortnite.
Yeah.
Because it's a shooter, it's a battle royale game. And other than sort of like your big streamers, it's a lot for sort of like the younger teens. Mm-hmm. It's very much a younger audience shooter. It's
a very cartoony shooter.
Yeah. But with it being a shooter, it's a aspect and contributor to, in quotation marks, violence. Why is it that the biggest thing that always comes from Fortnite is you just see the kids doing Fortnite dances everywhere? Why are they not going around shooting each other?
Well, like, just sometimes I think people who blame media and only media for, violence, I just think they need to, like, touch grass.
Yeah.
There's a great big world out there. Take a deep breath, step outside your house, touch grass and talk to another human being.
Yeah. Appreciate some other points of view.
Yeah.
Like, you can clutch your pearls all you want, but man, okay, let's say, for the sake of argument, 1 out of every 10,000 people killed because of a video game. I guarantee if you look at that person's life, there are other factors.
Yeah. And this is why cognitive behavioral therapy came about as a result of, sudden social learning theory was a step in the right direction, but then there was something about it that didn't feel right. Like there was missing factors, which is why CBT is a thing, and it's why it takes into account neurological, biological, behavioral, and social aspects as all factors in a person's biology and their behavior. I remember sitting in my A-level class and thinking, well, that's just cheating, just saying, oh, it's all the factors. But yeah, you know what 18-year-old said? Everything adds up, and it makes sense. And there was a very interesting thing I read where the American Psychological Association said that the interpretations of these effects have varied dramatically, contributing to the public debate about the effects of violent video games. Culture literally has shifted in its boots constantly about whether or not one piece of media or another is the source of moral degradancy. It used to be that they said it was Tom and Jerry. It used to be that they said it was all of these young new directors with their horror movies. They said it about Clockwork Orange, and that was why it was banned in this country, I'll have you know, for 20 years. They said it about video games, and they're still saying about video games because it's the most recent piece of media for us to point the finger at and say society has failed, when there's so many other things. There's bad parenting, failing school systems, young people today growing up with lower and lower expectations, wealth, and income than ever before in modern history. So many other factors.
Like, hey guys, violence and murder happened before video games were invented.
Fake news. I'm sorry, I've not heard of a single murder happening before the Atari 2600.
Jack the Ripper was not a person.
Nope, fake. You've been lied to.
But this is the thing, like, you can literally go to every annal of history and, like, Oscar Wilde was berated because everything that he was just commenting on society, and everyone went, no, and got really stressed out about the picture of Dorian Gray.
Yeah.
And then you can go even further back to Shakespeare and Marlowe, and then you can take it further back to, like, the Grecian playwrights.
The Roman philosophers.
Literally, like, Lysistrata, the whole basis of Lysistrata is that the men are too violent, and so women go, How do we get our husbands to stop fighting? Well, the only thing that men like are sex and war. Let's stop giving them sex. And so the women just, like, on both sides, withhold sex.
Amazing.
And it works.
What a moral to be taught as well.
Moral.
God, that'll solve all. Oh God.
It's so funny to me that, all right, Boise. But this is the thing. I think it's just... I just think it's bullshit.
Yeah.
Because you can blame any form of media and still be wrong.
Well, exactly. And, like, I think it's really interesting about how the sort of the political shift in culture as well. This is mainly the American aspect of it, because that's where most of the sources come from. But it's really interesting to see, like, when Doom came out back in the 90s?
Yeah, it was 93, 94, something like that.
And even before that with Mortal Kombat and Wolfenstein and all of those other violent video games that came out and look pixelated to fuck, but apparently incited moral panic and were part of the satanic panic. I know that there's probably a lot of examples of people who hated Doom because it was about demons, even though you are literally shooting demons. I don't understand how that ignites a moral panic. Like, I thought that's a good thing, but
I mean, there was Pokemon as well, incited it as well.
Pokemon incited it as well, which is wild to think that anybody can look at Fat Pikachu and think anything other than I love this son.
He was Fat Pikachu.
He was. He was a little chunky boy, and they thinned him up. And I'll never forgive Game Freak for this horrible offense.
Pokemon Sword and Shield. It was either, can't remember if you pre-ordered it or if you played it and downloaded a mystery gift before a certain date. They introduced Dynamax. And there was Gigantamax. They gave you a special Pikachu that couldn't evolve, that when Gigantamaxed was just Fat Pikachu, and he was huge.
Chunky boy.
Huge chunky boy.
He was a chunky boy.
We love him. But, like, even if you look at, like, modern military shooters like Call of Duty, Battlefield, whatever, you can argue very, very well these shooters glorify the American military industrial state. They celebrate the death of a lot of largely people of color and associate them with terrorism. They are terrible games. But then there are people on the other side of the political spectrum that also complain about some of the aspects of them, that they're not representing the military in the best possible light. Specifically, there's been examples in the past of where in Medal of Honor, there was a massive stink about that in the multiplayer. You played as a member of the Taliban during one of the heights of the Afghanistan campaign, and that created a lot of controversy. In the same way, Spec Ops The Line, you specifically play as an American soldier, and the game tells you outright you are committing war crimes, and you fight against American soldiers, and you murder an entire civilian population.
Yes, you commit mass genocide.
Where does this fit into the argument? Where does a game like that fit into the argument? Is it pro? Is it anti? And as these games have gone on, it's created even more arguments and even more debate. Like, should we in World War II shooters play as the Nazis in the multiplayer version? Is it justified or right for us to be able to, in a World War II shooter, play as the Japanese or play as the Germans or even the Russians, when all of these countries committed atrocities, but then so did the Allies in a lot of sense?
The way I would personally, just as a personal justification for those sorts of ideas, that yes, the political ramifications and the ideals of the people in charge of these countries weren't always held by everyone in the armed forces at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was me and I'm like, okay, I just happen to be playing as, say it's World at War, I just happen to be playing as either the Germans or the Japanese, I'd be like, okay, I'm just a soldier that believes I'm doing my bit to help my country, whether or not I agree with what the higher-ups believe.
Yeah.
And that it's very much a simple way around it.
Yeah.
it eliminates the need for a political agenda.
Yeah. I think people find these arguments difficult because it paints video games in particular as talking about things that they're not allowed to talk about. That for some reason, a video game is not allowed to be art or discuss things in an artistic way. It's not allowed to create debate. A game that I really love, Victoria 2, it's a strategy game. It is a literal graph paper game. It's all about politics and being an economic simulator. But what does it simulate? 19th century warfare, imperialism, colonialism, and it has a massive emphasis on the American Civil War, colonialism of Africa, and the opening of Japan. And a new version of the game is coming. And should it? That's a debate that I think should be had, and I really want to see this new game, and I really want them to discuss those things, to talk about that reality, to educate people, because
that's the thing.
I think that video games are art, and as such, they need to be held to that standard. And if they teach lazy lessons, then people will learn lazy lessons. But if these games are conscientious and teach good things, teaching the right lesson is the answer.
I think
at the end of the day
comes from, I think, at least nowadays compared to the earlier times of video games, the people who are now forcing these arguments through, or perhaps have these negative ideals of video games, have been those who to them it's just been something their child played. It's always this childish idea. Whereas for us growing up, we've seen what it actually means and what some of these games actually can do. And we realise how influential they can be and how much it can actually teach.
Yeah.
Because we've been there, we've grown up, we've experienced it as we've grown up. And I suppose that's why the argument is a lot more problematic now. It's a lot more in-depth because you've got the sort of the old-timey side of ideas compared to our ideas now. And that's where the clashes come, I'd say.
Yeah.
And even then, it's going to keep on going because there'll still be those people who still sort of have the older ideas of what a video game is. And as video games become more and more realistic, as graphic engines become better and better, and as more ideas are put forward and explored, I'd argue that, especially compared to the previous generation sort of idea of horror films were the problem, or this was the problem, I do believe that video games will be that scapegoat for such a more extended period of time until we get something new, like, say, I don't know, like
virtual reality. It'll be virtual reality.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I think it is obviously like people looking at video games nowadays and still seeing Mario when there are games like The Last of Us, games that make people cry, that change people.
Yeah.
But then there's also a debate to be had for a lot of things that are going on in video games that we, as the people who enjoy them, need to have, and the people who are creating them need to have. I really want Paradox Interactive, if you're listening to this podcast, I doubt that you are, but I really want to see there be more discussion about these sensitive issues that are going on in that game. I want there to be discussions about whether or not it's okay to portray 19th century imperialism in any way, shape, or form, or if it's more better to educate people in that way, even if it is in that very abstract, very cold, looking at a map kind of way. Will that lead people to go and educate themselves? And do we have, or do they have, as the creators of the game, a duty to give us the resources to learn those things? And I think it's interesting and it's very important. And
it is.
Yeah.
It's a huge debate, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be having probably, we're in our 20s now, we'll be having that probably into our 50s and 60s when we've got grandchildren playing games.
Yeah.
What I will say as well is, as far as I'm aware, video games have not been the causation of as much public destruction of property and violence and evilness as football has within this country.
Football hooliganism. Yeah.
Yep. And like, that's not to say that, you know, every football fan is. What it is it's too far, because when you go see the football, you can have a drink, and, you know, it was like when England was in the World Cup and we got to like the finals. I remember walking home from work and genuinely being frightened for my life. And I've never felt that, like I felt uncomfortable walking into like game when there's loads of like lads playing COD. But also, I know for a fact I could probably take at least 5 of them on and probably win.
Ah, yes.
So, you know, it's a bit different. But very rarely do you see them kind of on top of ambulances and bus stops and taxis and pulling, you know, windscreen wipers off of stuff and shouting abuse at, you know... There's always going to be a scapegoat.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's currently visual media.
Yeah. It used to be books.
It used to be books. It used to be plays.
People used to blame moral degeneracy on Shakespeare, and honestly, they're right.
They're right.
Shakespeare was a raunchy boy.
Absolute. Shakespeare wrote more dick jokes than I've taken breaths.
Absolutely.
Good lord.
That bit in that Shakespeare play that you think isn't a dick joke? Dick joke.
It's a dick joke.
It's a dick joke.
Or it's either a dick joke or your ma joke.
Or it's him bitching about the Rose Theatre down the way, which is always my favourite thing. That
so good.
A rose by any other name would smell just as sweet was actually a joke about the Rose Theatre because it was built next to the sewers, which is, beautiful. Good job, so good. Shakespeare.
Shakespeare was such a petty bitch, and I absolutely love it.
Beautiful man.
So,
yes.
Our topics have been discussed. We have one more on the table, do we not?
I believe we do.
Lauren,
go ahead, kid.
What you bringing?
What I'm bringing is gonna come as a surprise to no one.
What are you selling? You're selling
No.
Achoo.
Achoo.
This is a wee shout out to Nat's What I Reckon on YouTube. We love you so much. You're amazing.
Me life.
I'm bringing to the table how predominantly women are and have been portrayed within media, and how our cultural contexts and shifts has really changed that. Really changed it, and it's incredible, and I'm very excited about this because, like, women within modern media, women within media of, like, you know, your kind of Alfred Hitchcock era and your, like, Marilyn Monroe's
early sort of that
kind of
golden
60s,
age Hollywood sort of idea.
We were always either, like, the femme fatale.
Yep.
Or we were the big, sad, doe-eyed...
The ingenue.
Barbara.
Yes.
Barbara in Night of the Living Dead.
Barbara in Night of the Living Dead. They're coming to get you, Barbara. We're
coming to get you, Barbara!
No! If you want to know what, it's like at any given point, it's me doing the Night of the Living Dead quote and then Jack doing Shaun of the Dead immediately afterwards.
Yes.
But what's been incredible is seeing how women have become more, as we've kind of discussed, more morally grey. It's delicious. I love it. I love to see it. So... one of my favourite examples currently is The Invisible Man, the original one in 1993, was all about a man made a potion, drank it, turned invisible, went mad. Very simple formula. We do like to see it. He has a fiancée in it who, God, do you know what? Fair honour, for 1933, she's alright. She is very much, you know, like, you need to make your decision between being an absolute insane bastard or marrying me. They're your two options, boy. Choose. Whereas what happened in The Invisible Man 2020, spoiler alert, I am going to discuss what happened in The Invisible Man 2020. If you do not want any spoilers, I suggest...
God. No, I think I've had this spoiled to me by Facebook once. Yeah, I think I know.
Yeah. So, massive spoiler alert. If you carry on listening to this bit, I'm really sorry. This is now on you. Basically, woman is being abused by her husband, gets away, husband dies, she gets left millions of dollars. But then she starts to think that she's being, like, stalked by him. And she knows it's him throughout different things. And it's just incredible, this kind of, like, difference that they did with it. And what was amazing was it was this very realistic portrayal of how it feels to know you're being stalked and no one believing you. Because it is literally the way that society looks at stalkers when people report them. It's like, well, no, they're not there. It's like, no, but they are. And it turns out it's a wee bit convoluted, but it makes perfect sense. It was the husband's brother who was in the suit that she kind of ended up accidentally killing. And then you find out the husband has been, like, locked in his basement and stuff like that. But it's not. You know, she still knows it's him and you still know it's the husband. Mm. And it's this thing again of, like, it's so easy for abusers to use scapegoats and blame anyone but themselves. And what's incredible is that usually that, like, one, she would never have found that out. It would have been another man would have found that out. And then, you know. But two, she gets her revenge. And it is amazing. And it's very cathartic. And I think the kind of... To say that both were born of the same idea is incredible to see. Because there is such a dissonance in the way that quote-unquote craziness is perceived in the male who's gone invisible and the strength of the female counterpart. And it's so cool, and I love it a lot. And then it's another thing, it's like, you know, Midsummer, Danny, it's not a good ending for Danny, but you still feel for her because we've all seen time after time after time this super tired trope of, but I'll stay with him because he loves me. Mm. Mm. And usually it's always like, especially in rom-coms, it's always played off like it's a good thing. Like this woman who's got her dream job and loves everything that she does, goes home to see a ma, and then all of a sudden a stable boy is like, hey, I think you should marry me. And she's like, you're right, what was I doing with my life? And it's like, well, you were following your dreams for one. But sure, give it all up for the man with the washboard abs, why not?
Gotta go for those abs.
Oh, go on.
I was just gonna make a joke that abs, you know, are the most important thing that anybody can have.
Yeah, that's it. That's, you know, personality doesn't matter.
Fuck personality. Well, you can't fuck personality. Bum.
And you can abs?
Well, if you try really hard.
They're attached. Oh,
if they're chiseled enough.
So,
like a...
segue us back onto that track. Gonna segue us well back onto the track.
Let's forget about that.
But it's super interesting to see, and it, especially as you said before, Seb, you see it a lot in Marvel films. When, let's be honest, when Marvel started out, the female representation was not good. It was not good. You had Pepper Potts, who was sarky because there's always that one sarcastic bitch. Mm-hmm. And then that was kind of it.
Yeah, what was Pepper Potts' personality in the first couple of Iron Man films?
Hopelessly in love, trying to emulate the same energy that Alfred does to Batman.
I guess.
Trying to create a love interest in there as well.
Yeah, which is very problematic in itself.
Yes.
You know, like that scene in BoJack where Princess Carolyn's like, you just want a mommy you can stick your dick into. That is how a lot of media basically wrote women.
Yeah.
Was they would be the emotional sounding board. They would, be a grounding stone for the male protagonist, but also would be hopelessly in love, and the male protagonist would never know.
Fucking which one is it? Which one is it? Movie media. Which one is it? Do they hate them?
Yeah.
Or are they hopelessly in love?
Love them?
You can't have your cake and eat it. You
can't. This is not Marie Antoinette. You can't do that shit.
Kind of time is a loop.
I think
but it's
like the only aspect of when that's actually happened and it's kind of worked is Much Ado. I think it's Much Ado.
Yeah.
Where it's like two characters who actively hate each other, but then that active hate, turns into them fancying each other because, of course, it does, because the power of British comedy.
Well, I think the thing with Much Ado was very much kind of, it was defense mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, this is the one person that can get under my skin, and I don't want anyone under my skin. And then both knew just what buttons to push, and then to hear other people be like, oh, did you hear that Benedict said that he was so wholly in love with Beatrice? And then she's kind of like, oh no.
Fuck.
Oh no.
Shit.
The reason that I do the thing is because I like hit, and also that's very, going back to what we were talking about in our first ever episode, it's very teenage.
Yeah.
Because I also show people I love them by gently bullying them.
Haven't we all?
But yeah.
Anyway, you were saying about very important things, and we keep derailing because we're terrible, terrible men.
It's God's men!
Men!
But it's this lovely shift from kind of minute pieces of media being about interesting women to a larger scale being very well integrated. Because, thinking about it, one of the most iconic films from the kind of golden age of cinema was Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. And the reason why that film is so iconic is because, one, the two women on set hated one another.
Is that
Joan Crawford and Bette Davis?
That's the one.
Absolutely despise one another. Very good.
I was going to say Joan Collins.
No, not that one.
No.
But then you had this women were always so catty to one another in film. They were never nice to one another, so it's very nice watching. I know it's very cheesy. Marvel, you guys know, dear listener, you are aware that I have a problem with the way that Marvel writes. Their writing is very ham-fisted, and the way that they did that whole lineup of all the women in, I think, Endgame.
Endgame, yeah.
Was it is not good. It is not the feminist thing you think it is. But I see what they were trying to do. Of it's very nice to have all of these women actually support one another, not belittle each other, not be like, oh well, my latex spandex is tighter than yours.
Oh Lord.
Comic books is a whole other thing of women that I can't even begin to go into.
You've heard of the Hawkeye Initiative, right?
I have.
Yeah.
I was actually going to talk about the Hawkeye Initiative because it's excellent.
Go ahead.
No, go straight ahead.
No, it's your thing. It's about the women. It's about the women to do the thing. The women.
So, and do as well, if I miss out a couple of bits, just hop in. But the Hawkeye Initiative basically was people, if you were drawing a female character, draw it again as Hawkeye. If it looks too weird, you've drawn your female character too sexually.
Mm-hmm.
That is the basis of it. That is the long and the short of it. And it works so well.
Why Hawkeye?
Because Hawkeye's got...
Is it the most sort of like androgynous figure as a comic character?
I don't think so. I think it was because... Why the fuck not Hawkeye?
Mm-hmm. I think it was like the character creator for Hawkeye just noticed that a lot of people were drawing female characters, and especially Marvel, weird, and was just like, I'm going to do it with Hawkeye and see what happens.
Yeah.
Oh no. And then posted about it.
I made a realistic woman.
Mm.
And yeah, it's that kind of... It just in modern media, it's become so much more prevalent that women have flaws, and they're not punishable flaws.
Yeah.
Prior to this, it would be like Taming of the Shrew. It was like, oh, well, she's so outspoken and da-da-da. We'll break her. We will literally break her spirit.
Yeah, that
and then it will be fine. And, like, that's the reason why Shakespeare wrote it, was to be like, look how fucking mean you are to your wives. Look at the fire this woman once had that you have now diminished. But, like, because it's so difficult as well, because obviously we had things like Legally Blonde, which it makes me so mad. It makes me so mad that men are like, oh, it's so pink. Like,
it's the point.
Just get your head out your ass for a second.
It's only been 100 years since pink was the masculine colour.
Literally. Like, dude.
Oh, well.
And you know, she's the man, and all of these, and Heathers.
Yeah.
And you had bites of what could be really nice films about women. But then they were all surrounded by this, like, a woman gives up her life for a man, and it's like, oh, well, never mind.
Mm.
But then in recent media, things such as The Good Place is a really good example.
Yeah.
Because, for example, Tahani in it is always very well dressed. She always looks amazing. She has that kind of Hollywood-esque glamour about her, but her personality, not phenomenal.
No.
Eleanor dresses like a normal person, not a great personality, but you love them because you recognise that these women are real.
Mm.
They're real people, and it's so nice to have real women, not this, like...
caricature.
Yeah.
Well, my friend doesn't get a lot of attention from boys, and, like, eyelashes out to God knows where. It's just, honestly, some. And it's lovely having real women. And, like, we seem to have lost... I know where it was the Victorian era, because it always is the Victorian era.
But it always comes back to Victorians.
It does.
She
it always
for
comes back.
71 years, you know.
I
will
for
do
64 years, you know.
I will do the English Monarch song, and you will
not
both regret it.
I just wanted to quote
Another
that
time, we will also get a cease and desist from the BBC.
Oh, God.
Yeah, let's not do that.
If they still care about horrible histories. I doubt that they do.
I don't think they do.
No, they replaced the cast. Why would they do that if they wanted it to be successful?
If you watch season, what is it, 5 and 6 of Horrible Histories? Don't talk to me.
Season 6 onwards.
6 and 7, yeah.
And you know, the one with the 6 idiots in are the best series.
Yeah, just watch Ghosts instead.
Just watch Ghosts on the BBC.
There you go.
I also can't say that thinking about the Goes Wrong show, where it's like, thank you to the BBC, I'm Crispine, the director.
Oh no, you've made me want to do it.
What?
The greatest DJ in the area, Pat Butcher. And I'm here today with... Yeah.
That was from Ghosts.
Right now.
Yeah, there's a scene in Series 2. It is incredible. Pat, in my opinion, the best ghost.
Incorrect, it's Robin, but
not,
go off,
Pat.
Queen.
They've got set up an audio capture device
for ghosts.
So he literally sits down and treats it like he's like on a radio show. So there's him and Matthew Baton's character. So it's Jim and Matthew Baton are these characters. And he just goes off saying, "Welcome to the show. I'm Pat Butcher. And he just starts going off through this they just host a radio show just for this audio equipment, which doesn't get picked up, unfortunately.
Going back to women.
Yeah,
yes, back to women. We keep doing this. These are important issues. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I think that was something that was really nice about when the dystopia boom happened, when the YA boom happened. 9 times out of 10, the protagonist was a woman.
Yeah.
Because they were all written by women, which was lovely.
So
and also...
Your Katniss and etc.
Your Katniss, your... was it her name? Tiss? I don't know. I didn't watch Divergent.
Although, speaking of
that
Triss and Yennefer in The Witcher.
Triss and Yennefer in The Witcher. Which I love that when he was asked about, like, oh, you have really, like, strong female characters in your books, he was like, you've never met a Polish woman, have you? And I was like, you know what? I'm very glad that you can cite your sources, Mr. Man.
That's such a Polish thing to say as well. For the record, I am Polish and like, yeah.
It was
met my
excellent.
mum? Yeah.
Because we also had these kind of female heroines back, you know, at Pride and Prejudice and Tenant of Wildfell Hall and Wuthering Heights. And it was delicious and wonderful and I loved it. And then, you know, men happened. Men got into media, they got into the cinema and created what they wanted to see. Thus where the idea of the male gaze comes from.
Well, yeah, this is the thing, that the Hollywood system started as a boys' club, and in a lot of ways, you know, there's still strong aspects of that boys' club in a lot of the Hollywood system, which is something that places like Amazon and Netflix, although, you know, raw corporations are bad, they escape that corporate system in that there's more freedom, which is why we get shows like The Good Place, because that kind of show I don't think would have been made 15 years ago when Netflix wasn't very big, and the only way that you could get a TV show off the ground was by going through these corporations in Hollywood, which
TV channels, cable, etc.
Yeah,
and it definitely is something like that, and it's, you know, it's infuriating being a woman, as I've already previously discussed, in nerd culture, in geek culture. It is hard, and I remember watching Critical Role and just being gobsmacked that there were three whole ass women in this podcast, and being like, cool, I can do that. I can, you know, and I think genuinely, as we've previously discussed, Big Bang Theory has so much to answer for in regards to how women are viewed in nerd culture. Because that also, I truly believe, halted, like, Marvel and superhero films having a lot of women in them. Because people all of a sudden took this idea of, like, haha, bazinga, no women. And it's wonderful to see, particularly within, like, 2020. It seemed like a very heroine-heavy year. That sounded wrong.
Not that one. That has always annoyed me, that those two words are synonyms, bar, like, one letter. It's just like, that's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, it fucking sucks. Because, like, there's not one called Hero.
No. Oh, is there a drug called Hero? That's actually.
I mean,
if we looked hard enough, I bet we could find one.
Yeah, but there's a drug called BoJack. We're not gonna, like, look into that one.
I mean, it's like when I accidentally stumbled across on the internet that there was one called Halfling's Leaf, as we discussed in the
Halfling Leaf.
Podcast.
Yeah.
But I just, like, I think, you know, things like I Care a Lot was brilliant because it took the idea of women being carers and spun it on its head. It was wonderful.
Is that the one with Rosamund Pike?
It is indeed. Yeah. I'm thinking of Ending Things. I feel like I'm just, like, quoting thrillers. Whoops. The Invisible
Fleabag.
Man. Fleabag. Oh.
How could you forget Fleabag?
Fleabag. How I forgot Fleabag is beyond me, because all I do is bully you two into trying to watch it. Because the reason why Fleabag resonated with so many people is because it's so true. You can sit there and say, oh, well, Fleabag's a bad person. Da, 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 da. Look at those around her. Instead of immediately directing your hate towards a woman who is not immediately morally good, look at those around her, because she is surrounded by terrible people also.
Mm-hmm.
Not one character in that show is good, and neither should they be. They are true representations of people, and it is wonderful to see it. And God, that show hurts. It hurts because it is so raw. There's a bit where she stands up and she says, I don't think I'd be a feminist if I had bigger tits. Phenomenal line. Great delivery. But like, yeah, man. That's how we were made to feel, was that you couldn't be a woman if you weren't slender. You couldn't be a woman if you weren't like curvy in the right places. You couldn't be a woman for this. You couldn't be a woman for that. What if we did have that? Would we be a feminist?
Yeah.
Well, no, you don't know that.
Well.
And it's easy for like you guys to say, yeah, but I've also had to be like, hey, I've had to call you out and stuff.
Yeah.
And like,
it's
truly
good to be called out though. Like,
100%.
You should call people
you have
out
to learn
for their mistakes.
Yeah, you have to learn, because if you don't, then what are you doing other than becoming extremely toxic?
Oof.
Yeah.
But it's this thing of, if I was told that I was perfect,
why would you want that to change?
Why? Yeah. Why would I want people's perceptions to change?
Yeah.
And that line, it's one line. That is one line from the show, and the amount that it just opens up, and it's lovely and heartbreaking and so many emotions all at once that sometimes it feels like it crushes you. And I think that's what women well written can do.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you question things. I could not give a shite if a man came on screen and said, if my dick was bigger, would I be a feminist? Because that's not an issue. That's not a thing. And like, there's a lot of jokes that in media that men make about the size of their penis. Very rarely does like a boob joke kind of end in not, I'm going to get a boob job or you need a boob reduction.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, right? Because all they want is for you to look at their boobs. They don't want you to think about the moral kind of ambiguity behind what they're talking about. And I just, honestly, if you haven't seen Fleabag and you don't like Phoebe Waller-Bridge and you don't like things that make you think, I still would watch it, just because sometimes you need media that doesn't have happy endings in it.
Here.
Yeah. I suppose, would you say it's almost, although it's great we're finally getting these female characters that are making you both feel happy but also so sad and so in so much pain, although it's great, obviously it should be at a point now where you shouldn't have to have those feelings as well, because it just should be the norm that these are the characters that are portrayed.
It should be the norm, but it's not.
No, but that's what I mean.
It should be that I can put on a show. So, like, I'm so sorry because I keep going back to BoJack, but it's the closest thing that I can think of that has that kind of no happy endings. When you watch BoJack Horseman, he never questions himself in the respect of, like, would I be an advocate for other people if I were? His thing is always, I am a bad person, and it talks about mental health, and that is amazing because more men need to talk about their mental health, please.
Here.
please. And also note that, you know, there will always be someone there to listen to you. Because you are not alone through any of this. But even in that, Diane and Princess Carolyn and Sarah Lynn, all of them have a moment where their appearance or their age is called into question. The only thing with BoJack, I think, is they're like, oh, well, he's too old to play Secretariat.
Yeah.
Whereas, like...
There is this scene, I think it's very early on in the first series, about... Remember, it's obviously highlighting how much BoJack is a terrible person. Where there's the girl that's taking the piss out of him. Yeah. Do you know, in the bar, saying that he's too old, he's too fat, how is that saying BoJack Horseman? But it also goes back to the whole thing of, oh my god, you think I'm pretty? And straight away...
And then it's gone. And
she has sex with him and that's it.
Yeah.
And she's just sort of discarded as a character. But of course, BoJack's intention there is to highlight that this is a problem.
Yeah. And you know, there's the bit with... Oh, Sarah Lynn is one of the saddest characters in media. Where it's like, it shows her as like a child, then her as a 17-year-old, and then it's like, well, she's 30 and washed up and no one cares anymore. And it's like, yeah, she's 30. And that's it. It's not she's out of shape.
Yeah.
It's not she's gotten ugly. It's she's 30.
And it's as true an indictment of the creative industry today as it was 5-8 years ago, whenever that episode of BoJack Horseman came out, because that still happens to a lot of really young, really talented, really successful actresses. They get sidelined because of small shit like that.
Yeah.
There's a great moment that I don't think is spoken about enough where Diane volleys for people to be able to carry guns, and then California literally passes a legislation to ban guns instead of let women carry them. And Diane says, God, I didn't think they hated women more than they loved guns. And Princess Carolyn just looks up from her phone and goes, no? Amazingly funny moment, but damn. And I think that's what's so important about female characters now, is we're talking.
Yeah. Like, I feel like there's been an anger in people, like women, like people of colour, people from immigrant families, this anger of always being told that they're not allowed to talk, that they're not allowed to say what they want to say, to sit down. And that anger is coming out, and it's so important that it does, because it's raw and it's fresh and it's important to hear. And the people who say, people would be uncomfortable if you're that angry, are the people that need to hear it the most.
It's not, they're the people who are uncomfortable because it's pointing out their own flaws.
And good. People should be uncomfortable. I should sit here and feel uncomfortable being a man hearing all of this. Because if I don't, that's a problem. It implies that I'm washing my hands of this when I am just as culpable as any other man is. And yes, all men.
Yeah. Because if you're not talking about the problem, you're not stopping it.
Yeah.
And I never meant for this to become as kind of deep, I think, as it has become, but I won't apologize for it doing so, because it was a conversation that I clearly needed to talk about. It was something that I do feel very strongly about. And I think sometimes you need to hear it in the context of a fun conversation.
Yeah.
I think Daniel Sloss does it very well.
Daniel Sloss is the great...
He is the king of turning a comedy series into making you feel bad.
Yeah.
Well, that, but he's also probably the best person to have a serious discussion with you. because the comedy before and after the conversation lessens the blow, so you don't feel too deep and dark that you don't want to deal with it, just enough that you will seriously consider it.
I think as well, and he said this in his comedy, he is a white man. Yeah. He is a white cis het man. I think he's het. I'm not sure. If I'm wrong, Daniel, I'm very sorry.
I'm sorry, Daniel.
But I found in my experience, men tend to listen to men more about women's experiences than they do to women. And if I can just get some of you to listen and then to pass on the sentiment behind what I'm saying, I hope I'll have used my platform in a way that I can. And as well, I want to take a moment to just say, we are not at all ignoring or kind of smoothing over any issues that, as Seb said, POC peoples will face, or you know, people who are transgender, people, anyone of you who is in a minority that we have not touched upon. I swear to you, we are not brushing over your story, but as 3 white people, we can't tell your story, but we will lift your voices in any way that we can, because it's important that we use our platform to do so.
Hell yeah. Especially in this nerdy little podcast that we have, because it's a space that, by the gods, needs to have those conversations more.
Oh gosh, it does. It
talk,
does.
Talk to your friends who you're sitting around a table with pretending to be a goblin. Talk to your DMs, talk to your teachers. Open these conversations because they're important.
They need to be had. And especially, you know, D&D. We all know the problems they're in. Discuss it with your friends and listen to their queries, listen to their qualms and what upsets them about it. Work together to find a good solution.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I say, I never meant for this to go as deep as it has, but I'm kind of glad that it did.
Here we are. We did it.
It's a good platform to...
It was kept on topic as well, so it's not like you derailed anything to just push something.
I think it's the longest point that we have actually stayed on topic for this entire series
impressive.
So far.
I mean, to be fair, that does show the importance of what was being said more than anything.
And like, we mean it.
I will apologise for a thing, at least on my behalf. I'm sure Seb will agree that early derailment on the topic, I think that is very much our own uncomfortable feelings about it.
And it's just that coming through unconsciously, however it comes.
Yeah. But obviously, once we realised what we were doing, it simmered out and we listened. And that's what needs to be done if people aren't listening to your stories as well. Just
keep powering
ask
through.
Them to listen. Yeah. Power through, keep the topic going, keep the conversation going. Eventually, they'll catch themselves or they'll show their true colours.
Yeah. And the thing is, if someone's going to just keep ignoring you and not lifting your voice when you're trying to do it, then look after yourself before you do them.
Yeah.
I think,
So yeah. I don't think there's anything kind of more to say. I am going to do some research into some creators that I will link in our descriptions.
And again, with the topics we have discussed today, please like, comment, subscribe. Tell us what your thoughts on what we discussed are, your viewpoints, interpretations of either the media that we've discussed today or your interpretations compared to ours. We always like to hear what you guys are thinking, what your viewpoints are. Like we say, we're here for an open conversation about these things. Yeah. And that's what's important.
Call us up, call us out, and tell us what we did right and wrong.
Exactly. And as we said, I think we're agreeing that for the most part, our person of interest this week, just by accident from our first topic, Florence Pugh.
I
apologise for forgetting the name. I am devastated I did so, because she's an extremely talented actress.
She is.
Thank you very much for listening once again, everyone. Take care of yourselves. Look after yourselves.
Be kind. Be good. Keep going.
Indeed.
You've got it.
Thank you very much, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
In the Goblin Cave.
Bye.